Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk about Secret Project number 4. Ironically, it's going to be the first video I make for the spooky month, for my favorite month, for October. So that's the reason why we have all our creepy stuff up in the back. So yeah, but I am really happy this is the end of the year of Sanderson, at least as far as the Secret Project novels go. And I'm really excited to talk about it because we are deep back into the Cosmere, and it is really fun. I like the way this story is structured, and I really like the stuff Brandon has done with it, so I can't wait to talk about it. First, we're going to talk a little quick non-spoiler section, then we're going to jump into the spoilers. We can talk in more detail. So, of course, as always, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and let's begin. So, Secret Project number 4, called The Sunlit Man, is a really interesting story. It's very ironic that I just so happen to be listening to it now, or, it's not really ironic because this has been planned for a long time. But I just so happen to have finished a story by Drew Hayes that is the same kind of trope. It is very, and Brandon also acknowledges this at the end of the story, so it's not really a spoiler or anything. He kind of acknowledges this in terms of the way he constructed the story. It's kind of the idea of a loner wanderer kind of just running across a situation where there's people that needs his help, and he kind of gets sucked into that place and helps them. Stephen King has a story like this called The Wolves of the Kala, where it's the exact same kind of trope archetype situation, and Drew Hayes does the same thing in Villain Vignettes. So I think it's really funny that I just so happen to be right in the mix of these types of stories right now, and I think this one hit really well because it scratched that Cosmere itch that I always have. So the story itself is very straightforward. The plot is very familiar, and it kind of goes in a very familiar way. It's nothing too dramatic. There isn't a lot of hardline philosophy behind it. There's not even a lot of in-depth, thought-provoking themes about it. It's really just a fun romp. But the thing that is truly the icing on the cake for this is all the Cosmere inclusion. So it's similar to Tress in that it's just a great bones of a story, and then you add on the Cosmere stuff and it becomes that much better. But this one is far more like all the best stuff about it is the Cosmere stuff, and all of the just okay stuff is really the plot stuff. So that's kind of a downgrade for the story. That the story itself is only medium. The prose are really well done. The characters are really well done. The plot is interesting, but it is, as I said, it is something we've definitely seen before. It is very much a kind of tropish, kind of archetypical story construction. So the story is very familiar, but the injection of all the Cosmere stuff definitely levels it up for me. So that's really where my primary enjoyment comes from. So for me to really talk about the stuff I enjoyed, I of course have to jump into the spoiler section. So I definitely do recommend this. This is probably a terrible spot to just get started in the Cosmere because there's so much deep lore in here that it will, like, the greater context of it will make no sense unless you have a healthy Cosmere background, basically. It's not like Tress in that it can just be read and be enjoyed regardless of your Cosmere level knowledge. I think this one requires a significant amount of Cosmere knowledge to truly get the true core of what is meant to be understood from this story. So let's go ahead and talk spoilers. Spoilers for The Sunlit Man, The Sunlit Man by Brandon Sanderson. So I guess we know who Zellian is now, so that's really cool. And holy crap, what a level of implication. As I already said in the non-spoiler section, the story itself is very medium for me. It's very run-of-the-mill. It's very much an archetypical type of story structure that I've seen before. So there's not a lot that I really want to talk about with the story because it is very much a wanderer shows up, helps this group of people, and then as soon as he helps them, he takes off. Not even a real goodbye. So it's very much just a side quest in this greater storyline. But the thing that is very interesting about it is this is a character that we've known for a very long time. This is Sigel from Bridge 4. But there is also a question of how far in the future this is. But given the information that we're getting in the story, or given in the story, it kind of answers it while leaving a lot of interesting questions. So, as I've already said, Zellion, we find out Zellion is one of Sigzo's new names. He basically gets adopted by this planet that he goes to, and they give him the name Zellion. So, the figure, the miniature figure that's a part of one of the new Brandon's Kickstarters, the most recent one, that character, the 3D figure, is Zellion. And everybody's been trying to figure out who that character is, and like there was no way we could have figured out who it was. So it was really, really cool to kind of figure out who this character is, and it's a greater reveal than I expected it to be, because the design of the character is so not what I would expect for the future of this character of Sigil. So let's kind of talk about it in an overall arching kind of thing. So Sigzo is a character that I didn't really think much about, but I did think that he had some level of significance to him because of the fact that he is Hoid's apprentice. He started off as Hoid's world singing apprentice. So I assume that connection to Hoid would have had some kind of significant ramifications. But by the fourth by the fourth Stormlight book, there hasn't been any greater mention of it. There's no, bigger, kind of context or anything that's been played with. So I kind of let it go. I didn't think much about it. So to find out that somewhere down the line, I'm assuming after the events of at least Era 1, maybe the back 5, this might be way after the back half of Stormlight also, because we're told Sigil is now probably over 100 years old, so we're not quite sure where this is in the overall timeline. But Sigil eventually is given the Dawn Shard that Hoid had possession of for a short period of time, which is a little confusing to me because Hoid no longer has the Dawn Shard. Or is it like, did Hoid find a way to store the Dawn Shard and required it to be moved and had to adhere it to somebody else and didn't want to take it up again, so he had his apprentice do it, who is Sigil. So maybe something like that happened. Maybe we'll figure it out later. I don't know. Maybe that'll be something worth a video just to speculate and guess about, maybe. So apparently by having the Dawn Shard for a short period of time, he has the similar affliction that Hoid does, and that Hoid cannot cause any violence. He cannot harm anything, even to the point of eating meat. So Sigil, having had it for a shorter period of time, he just really has a hard time defending himself or doing any actual violence. But it's ironic that he ends up on this planet that kind of gives him the ability to kind of deal with it in a way. It gets a little complicated because we don't know the real mechanics of what's going on. Because one of the reveals that we get in here is that I have no idea what it is. I assume it's still some form of a Niall bond, I guess. But essentially, at some point, probably because he took up the Dawn Shard, Sigil loses his connection with his honor sprint. But it's mentioned multiple times that he abandoned those oaths. So I don't know if sorry, I'm thinking, I just finished the book. But it's also kind of implied that he himself abandoned the oaths. So it's not so much that he took up the Dawn Shard, he just outright abandoned them. So it's not really a mechanical thing in the fact that he picked up the Dawn Shard that forced that bond to break. So it might be something else. But there's also the idea that we know if someone as invested as a Knight Radiant takes up a Dawn Shard, that will magnify their power to dangerous degrees. So did he have to give up his original bond before doing that? Or we don't know the sequence of events at all. Just it's something to guess and speculate and wonder about. But also, at another point, he apparently takes up an honor sprint, who is the sprint that we hear him talking to in this story, Auxiliary. He takes up a high sprint and becomes a Skybreaker, effectively. And we have obviously no idea when that happened, how that happened, whether it was before or after the Dawn Shard situation. I don't know. But I really like this way in which we learn about this new sprint. It's really interesting, some of the little crumbs that were dropped, because he kind of makes mention of high sprint being very static and not, changing or anything, which is something that we know based on Zet's high sprint. So it's kind of fascinating to see this high sprint with so much personality, but also the way in which they communicate and kind of talk about. It's very unclear because it sounds very much like a technology thing. It seems like Sigil has a device that can do all the stuff that a living sprint would be able to do. and the sprint also makes mention of having been dead. So I'm wondering if this is a case of like broken oaths, but by Mishram is not imprisoned anymore, so therefore they don't go like dead mind Spren. They just kind of change a little bit. But like it appears that he's just a Spren, but it has this interesting like other situation. I don't know. I guess like the auxiliary Spren has more or less like taken control of all of the collective investiture nature of Sigel at this point, because the really interesting thing is the way auxiliary keeps track of Sigel's freaking investiture count, like tell him he has like such and such percentage of skip capacity, which is not what Hoyt does when he world hops. He takes perpendicularities and stuff to our knowledge, but Sigel seems to be able to just go. He just kind of is basically like else calling, it seems like what he's doing. And there's so many questions around it. There has to be multiple other videos basically just to pick through all these little things and wonder and guess and speculate about and stuff. So I'm really interested to do that. This story, again, as I said, it's almost not even worth talking about because it's so run of the mill. Like Sigel is clearly the Wanderer. He is very much the what's his name in Mad Max? I can't remember the guy's name, but this story is kind of similar to Mad Max, at least aesthetically in a lot of ways. It's a really interesting planet. The planet can't be much more than like 2/3 the size of the moon, and it's like very tiny, and it has to be very close to its star because of its situation, and just the nature of the planet and stuff. The fact that there's anybody on it is amazing. If it's not for investiture, it would be completely uninhabitable, obviously. It basically is uninhabitable. So the story itself is not that interesting, but the really interesting stuff around it is stuff like the nature of the planet, the way the investiture kind of affects their lives and stuff, and the way you can make use of the ecology and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of that stuff is really fun. Of course, it's Cosmere world building, so it continues to be very fascinating. Sadly, the story itself is just not that great. We kind of get an understanding of where where Sigel is, and kind of the rest of the characters are kind of bland. So I don't know. If I was rating this, I would have to split the rating. I would have to say the story itself is no more than a 5 out of 10. But when you inject all the Cosmere stuff and the interesting world building and the depth of the magic system and stuff like that, which is honestly entirely, connected to the story itself, so it's hard to extricate those two different things. But for me, the Cosmere stuff is just so much more enjoyable, to the point where I can extract all of that from the greater story and not, miss anything. So that's why I say the story itself is not that great, but all the Cosmere stuff is amazing. So the main story is probably about a 5, but the Cosmere stuff goes up to about a 9. So yeah, that's my very rambly, just having finished the story. We're definitely going to talk about it again in a couple more videos coming up. So yeah, make sure you stick around for that. So let me know in the comments down below. You finished the Sunlit Man. How did you feel about it? How do you feel about the Year of Sanderson? At least the books part of it. How do you think that's culminated? Let me know about that in the comments down below. And as always, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And I will talk to you all next time. Peace.